Hello. Today is Sunday, March 27th. It's an Easter day, so most of the people are with the families. It's a family day, uh, but it's also a weekend, so it's our weekend Tableau training series. So today I'll be talking about data sources in Tableau. So if you're trying to learn Tableau on your own, um, there is a certain technique to follow on how to learn Tableau. So if you open the Tableau page and if you go to how to videos and do view all, you see all these training videos. So the first three videos are getting started. So the first one is the getting started, which has the demonstration of the story for the profitability. We did a detailed demo on this one. It's one of the earlier presentations. Then the next two are about Tableau interface, and we did a detailed demo on the shipping cost story based on these two. So that's the first section. Next you go to connecting to data. Connecting to database and advanced features. So we did a detailed demo on the AdventureWorks on this one. So this is just a 44 minutes video, but we did like a 40 minutes explaining how to connect with database and different things on the AdventureWorks. Today we'll be focusing on this connecting to data, discussing data sources. I'll be combining content from various videos together, but doing it in my own way, and the focus is going to be on data sources. So let's start with an example of data sources. So we go to Excel and we take a data source. So global superstore. So pick up this data source. A source could be an Excel, it could be database, and then we select the sheet we want, orders. We go to the sheet, and let's select sales. So what we will be doing in this video is how to switch the data sources. I'll be talking more about it in detail, but so right now I have one data source, and then I will get another data source, and I'll switch between the two data sources. So how to switch between data sources, how to resolve a conflict, a name conflict. A column is named something else in one data source versus the other, how to resolve that. So we will be talking about that. So what I like to do is I like to turn the label on so that I can actually see the value. So value is 12 million. Now it doesn't show dollar, so I prefer to look at the dollar. So what we can do is we can go and format it. Go to default properties, number format, go to currency, and yeah, so it's a 12.6 million is the sales. I'm going to move sales here, and then let's select anything else. For example, let's select category, and then sort it. So you can see that technology is the highest producer with 4.7 million sales. Furniture is after that, 4.1 million, and office supplies is 3.7 million. So, and then we can select something else. Let's say market, and I can sort again. So within the category, how are the different markets doing? So what I see is that Asia Pacific is doing the best in terms of sales. In technology, yeah. So this is like a workbook that we created. Now I'm going to switch the workbook, and we'll explain what we mean by switching. So let's go to another data source, get Excel, and let's pick up this global superstore, but it's slightly different. It's SLS. The name is slightly different and the data will be slightly different. So we pick up this one, we come to orders, I go to sheet, so what you see is this is your active workbook, which has this symbol here, mark. This is your active workbook, and look at here, there's a column called sales, and then this is another workbook that we brought in. So there's no column sales, but there's a column called SLS. So I'm going to switch the workbook, and what we mean by switching is, instead of using this, the first one with the cross, we'll start using the other one. So to switch it, we do a right click on it and we do a replace data source, and then we replace current with this SLS. So let's do a switch. Okay, so when we did a switch, all these things turned red and our graph grayed out, which means it's unable to display the data. So so the red is saying there's a problem. So I moved from this database to the other database, but now I can't display my data. But then if you come and look here, and you see on the sales, this is what is causing the error. The sales does not exist in the database. So what you do is you do a right click and replace reference. So select the replace reference and then go down, and we will replace it by SLS because that column has been named something else in the other workbook. So we replace it with SLS, click OK. So your reference got resolved. Now I can actually go and close the first workbook. I'll go and close it. So now basically our data is coming from SLS. Let me show you again. So now we're coming from SLS. We want to switch again. So the way to switch is select another data source, go here, select the data source you want to switch to. So I want to switch to this one, Global Superstore. Select it and then select orders. Go to sheet. So you've selected the other one, but it's not being currently used because the one with the arrow is the one being used. So go here, do a replace data source. So current is SLS replaced by Global Superstore. Do an OK. Again you see an error, and if you see here, the sum is on SLS, and when you come here, it says the field SLS does not exist in the database. So right click, go to replace reference, and instead of SLS, select sales. So do an OK. So it got replaced. Now I can go and close my other one. So why do we need to replace data source? Actually, there are many reasons when you have to actually replace your data source. One of them is when you're publishing to the server. If you publish your workbook like this, other people cannot open it because this data source is linked with your user ID. Especially if it's connecting to a database, you need to supply user ID password. So other people will not be able to open it. So typically what you do is you publish your data source uh, to the server, and then change your user to a generic user there on the server, and then you come back to your workbook and replace your data source with the data source on the server, and then republish your workbook. So that way anyone can open your worksheet on the server, and it is using a generic password. So to put it simply, you need to replace your data source when you're publishing to the server. So that is one case when you're switching. The other case is you may like to develop with less data. For example, if you go against some very large databases and you try to do the joins, your joins could take a very long time, like half an hour or more, and you'll not be able to develop your workbook. So a technique to use is to develop your workbook with a smaller data set, and then later on switch to the bigger data set. So that's another way when you can be required to switch data source. So but in this lesson we discussed how to switch the data source, but typically when you publish to the server you have to switch your data source. So this was the story that we covered today. Not the story, but the task. So this is one aspect of data source that we discussed. Let's close this and let's start another topic. Now this other topic is how to format your workbooks. So I'll show you a workbook, Excel workbook. It's called Data Prep Flights. So if you look at this workbook, it has different tabs. There's a tab called Resolve Incidents. It tells you some heading. There's some heading. It says Flight Data Summary. This report was generated on 1/1/2015. There's an employee, and then there's the employee location like BE. Then there's employee number, and then there's dates. So, and on this date, this employee resolved how many incidents. So it's the data like a support calls. You're tracking your support calls, like on which date which employee resolved how many tickets. Now this is not a data that Tableau likes to consume. This is not the format what Tableau likes. I'll show you the format that Tableau likes. Tableau likes this format. It likes a relational format, which is the date it can repeat, but the rows can repeat. The date is one column, then employee and the instance. So this is what Tableau likes, but as input. But what we are getting as input is this one. So how to convert from this format to the ideal format? That is what we'll be discussing here. Meanwhile, let me show you something else. In this employee, there are two columns. There's a location and there's employee number. Then there's another spreadsheet that I'd like to show you, tiers, which has actually three parts. There is a location, and then there's a dash, there's an employee number, and then there is a third column in some of them. So that is another spreadsheet that we will look at. And then this is the ideal. We already showed you, like we would like it to be in this format. And then irregular delimiters. So in this one, the delimiters are irregular. So instead of dash, there is a colon. So this is slightly problematic data. So we will talk about that also. So this is our data set that we are dealing with. So the data set is in this, like this, but we want to convert it into this format. How we are going to do that? So that is the purpose of this exercise. So let us show you how we'll do it. So we go to Tableau, and we take Excel. we select our this data prep. We select the spreadsheet, we open it up. Okay. Now, this ideal is the one that we want to go to, but the resolve incidents is the one that we have. So let's select resolve incidents. So if you go to the sheet, it is showing dimensions F1 to F9 and no measure. Tableau has difficulty dealing with this because it says this column number are F1, F2, F3, and then flight summary it says they are nulls. Report was generated is all nulls, and then it has data. So it has really difficulty dealing with this data. So Tableau has provided a wizard which is called the data interpreter. So these common type of problems, it already knows that these are common type of problems in a spreadsheet, and it will try to help you how to solve it. So what we will do is we will turn the wizard on. So we'll say turn on. So what it did, it removed all the columns which had nulls in them. So instead of F1, F2, F3, now you've got date as column names. So this is what the wizard did. And if you come here, you see it has put these measures as your date. But still this is not our ideal format. But let's see what the wizard did. So we go to review results. So this is the data interpreter. So it says in red, data is interpreted as column headers if it's red, and data is interpreted as source when green. Data is ignored, not included as part of data source when it's white. And then you go to your resolve incidents. What you see is anything that's white, it did not include it because it understood that this is like comment or notes. It's not data, so it's not going to treat it as data. This column in red is going to treat it as a header, and anything in green it's going to treat as data. So this is what the wizard did. But still it's not in our ideal format. If you look at our ideal format, let me go to the spreadsheet. Our ideal format is like this. The date should be on the rows instead of on columns, and then we should have employee number and resolve incidents. This is what the ideal format is. And whereas we don't have dates on the rows, we have dates on the columns right now. So there's another wizard that can help you. So what you do is you select the first column, then you press shift, and then you go right, select the last column, and then you do a right click and do a pivot. So just note this, you've selected all your columns and you're going to do a pivot, and this will happen very quickly. But what pivot does is it takes your rows and converts it into columns, and that's what we want to do. So it's going to take all these dates which are as columns and it's going to make them rows. So I'm going to click pivot, and that's what it did. It converted the columns into rows. Now let's go to our sheet. So employee pivot field names, so it is in a pivot values, it's in a better shape, but the columns names are not named nicely. This should not be called pivot table names, it should be called date. And you've got two columns here. One is this preview data source and the other is metadata. So we're going to change our column name. Either we can change it here or we can change it here. So we're going to change it here in the view. So instead of calling it pivot field names, I'm going to click write and rename. I'm going to call it date because this is actually date. And the data type is ABC, which means string. Well, this is not string, it's date. So I'm going to change the data type from string to date. So I change the column name, I change the data type. Now in this one, the column is named pivot field values. Well, that's not a good name. I'm going to rename it also to, I'm going to rename it to, these are basically resolve incidents. So I'm going to rename it to resolved incidents. Okay, and then employee is there. So let's look at it back here on the sheet view. So now you're seeing the date, employee, and the resolved incident. So this is much better. Now let's go again. Now what we discuss is that actually this employee name has two parts. It has this location, this B and E. This is actually employee location. Then there's a dash and then employee number. So I want to break it up into two columns. I want employee location as a separate column and employee number as another column. So there's another wizard that does it. So come here and select split. So we're going to do a split. So it will automatically split it using the dash. It's used for the delimiter, and it named these two columns. Now it named this column as employee split 1 and employee split 2. And employee split 1 is actually location and employee split 2 is number. So, but this is not what we want. So we come here, employee split 1 is actually location. So I go here and I change it to location. And employee split 2 is actually employee number. So now if you go back and look at your data, so it is named much better. So you've got a date, you've got resolved incidents, you've got employee. Now I may not like to use this field because it has too much information. I would like to break it up. So I broke it up into location and employee number. So now let's rename this sheet also, because sheet 1 doesn't make any meaning. So let me call it resolved incidents. Resolved, I'll just say resolved. So it's named better. But now you say I have a date, employee, employee number, and employee location and resolved incidents. So resolved incident is my measure. So I select my measure. I like to put the table labels on to see actually what's happening. So there are 1996 resolved incidents. I can move them to the column. Just move it up. And now I can I want to see by location, and that is what I got when I split the employee. So let me put location. Let me sort it. So now actually I can see that location E had 709 incidents resolved, C has 698, B had 404, A had. So E is the location which is doing the most. So if I have call centers at different places, from here you can see the call center E was doing the best. So you got this data out of the employee number. So this is, I want to see that. Then I want to see also which employee is doing what. So I come here and look at the employees and I do a order by. But now I actually want to see by employee, not just by location. So I can remove the location and do a sort on employee. So you see employee number 41, these employees are doing really well, but after that there's a gap. So it looks like there are two types of employees. Some employees are doing very well, but now we are getting visual analysis from our data. So we are getting meaning out of data. Now you will do another example. So this resolve incident we discussed. Now let's go back to the data source, go back to Excel. I'm going to pull up the same data prep flight video, but instead of selecting resolve incident, I'm going to select tiers. This is another sheet that I'm going to select. So I'm going to select the tier sheet. So in the tier sheet, if I want to go and look at Excel also, I can go and look at Excel. The tier sheet was very similar to the resolve incident sheet. It has some notes, then dates, resolve incident, but it has a third field here, which is the type of customer. So it is called tiers. So now I'm going to do an analysis on this one and get it into the format that Tableau can consume. So I come here. So I see these are all nulls. So as in the previous example, I'm going to turn on the wizard on, which is the data interpreter on. It removed that. It got these dates in columns. I don't want them in columns, so I do the first column selection. Then I go right. I do the last column, and then I do a pivot. So I'm going to convert my dates from column into rows. So it came into rows. I'm going to rename. So this is the same thing. I'm doing it again, but it's slight difference. So I'll show you where the difference is. This is the same. So I made this date, and I made the data type as date. I converted this pivot field name. I want to rename it to resolved incident. Resolve INCID. And so this is better. But if you look at it, the employee name has three parts now. It has a location, it has a number, and in some cases it has an employee type. And this employee type is not in every column. So the split wizard that I used, I will not be able to use it directly, but a different version of that wizard. So I come here. So instead of split, I'm going to use a custom split. So do a custom split. What is my delimiter? My delimiter is dash. And the number of splits I want to do is 3. I want to get 3 columns out of this. Now it's important to have a delimiter which is consistent. So all of them have a dash, so I can use it as a delimiter. However, if you had data which has a dash or a slash or something else, that Tableau will not be able to convert automatically. For Tableau to use this wizard, it needs a specific delimiter, and then you can specify the number of columns. So I specify the delimiter and number of columns. I click OK. So now it converted into 3 columns. So the first column is a location. I'm going to rename it location. The second column is employee number. So I'm going to name it employee number. Third column is actually employee type. So I'm going to say type. Okay. So these are 3 columns. If I want to go to the metadata view, I can rename it there also, but it's showing you that split 1, split 2, split 3 are actually, I renamed them to location, employee number, and type. So now let's open up another worksheet. I'm going to rename it to type, because this one we will actually be doing analysis of the employee type. So I select the resolve incidents, I put the label on, and then I move it up so that instead of rows it's on columns. I want to bring in the type to rows. So let me order it. So now actually it sees that employee 2 resolved these many incidents, and the one did not have 2 resolved. So now I'm getting a visibility on the type. I want to also get the location. So let me get the location. So these are the locations where the type 2 employees are. Now I want to get to see the employee number. I want to do that. Now, yeah, it's too much information. Right now I want to focus on the employees only. So I'm going to remove the location. So I will order by, and here you see that all the type 2 employees were able to resolve incidents at a higher rate, whereas the other ones were not able to resolve at that rate. So maybe this type denotes the level of experience. So the people who have experience of troubleshooting they can troubleshoot more incidents as compared to like new hires who don't have experience. So this is the type you divide by your data by, and you can visualize it. So in summary, we started with a data which was not in the format that Tableau can consume, which was like this, but we got into a format which is ideal, and we did it using wizards provided by Tableau without doing any programming. So this was our second topic for today. The first topic was the data sources, how to switch data sources. The second topic is how to format your data, Excel, into a format that Tableau can consume. So this is my second topic. Now let's talk about the third topic. So up till now, we've discussed how to get data from an Excel, how to get data from a database, but we've done it one at a time. There is another thing called data blending, and with blending means you get one data source from a database, get another data source from maybe an Excel. How do you combine them together? So we will do an example of data blending. So this is the third case we're discussing, data blending, how to do data blending in Tableau. So our examples are using Excel database. You could use database also, but the examples are using Excel database. So let's open up Excel.
Two different workbooks you use.
Yeah, so we're going to use two different workbooks. So we've got these two sales. There's a coffee chain and there is an office city. So the company has basically two product lines. One is it has a set of coffee chains, and then it has this office city. So these are two different products. So let's open up coffee chain. So let's take a look at the data. I'm going to rename this spreadsheet. I'm going to call it coffee.
Good question. Two means you can do or more.
You can blend more.
Okay.
Yeah. So we will do two blending between the two.
Okay.
Two data sources. So this is coffee. So this is coffee chain. So I created this spreadsheet at coffee. So I'm going to select sales. Let me move it to columns. I like to turn the labels on, and then I like to put the dollars on so that I know we're dealing with the amount, default properties, number format, currency. Okay, so coffee has a sale of $819,000. I want to see the sale by state. So let's bring the state to the rows. So it has these states, California to Wisconsin, and this is the amount of sales per state. So this is the sale of coffee. So it was total of $800,000, and this is how it's broken up. Now, if you go to data source, the data source is one data connection. So, like in the previous videos, we had this global superstore which had 3 tabs but within the same Excel. So that is one data source. Or if you connect with Oracle, you've got 100 tables and you do a left outer join or join, but that's one data source. So one connection is one data source. So this is one data source that we are using, which is one connection for the coffee. Now we're going to establish another connection. So we go here, add new data source. So we are going to open up another data source. So add new data source, go to Excel, and instead of coffee, we are going to select office city, which is a different data source. So open, and let me open a new worksheet, and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call this worksheet uh, rename. I'm going to call it office. Uh, so my tab that is selected right now is office. Now let me select sales from office, put it in columns. I want to turn the labels on. I want to again, now this is a different data source, so I need to do the setting again because it's a different data source. Properties, number format. I'm going to go to currency, and so the previous one was 800,000. This is 8 million. This is 8.9 million. And this also has data on sales, on state. So let me bring the state down. So in the previous one, all the states fit on one sheet. If you look at here, so everything fitted on one sheet. But here, you see this has many more states. So it's not fitting on one sheet, it has many more states. Okay. So look at this arrow here. This arrow shows that this is your primary data source and that is being used in this workbook. So in this workbook we are using office city. The other one, let's go back to the other one. In this one, if you see, the cursor is on the coffee. So this is what we are using, coffee chain. So we have two data sources. Now what I want to do is, within the same workbook, I want to use data from two different data sources at the same time. So right now I'm on the coffee, within this coffee workbook. I will remain within this workbook but click on the office city. So now I'm switched on to the other data source, which is not the primary data source. My primary data source for this workbook is coffee, but I switched to the office city. And if you click here, this chain is a link. So those two data sources are linked together by state. Both of them have state, so they are linked together by state. And if I come here to data, I look at edit relationship. So it shows you both of the relationship established between these data sources based on state. Now it is possible that there was some columns which was named differently, but it had the same value. So in that case, what we can do is we can press custom and we can do an add, and we can establish a relationship between the two data sets using a column which we specify. But as long as they need to have the same data values, the column name could be different. What we need to try to do is to connect the data at the lowest level. So these data sources have actually data at the lower level. This has a zip code, but unfortunately the other one doesn't have zip code. So we will not be able to connect on zip code. This has an area code, which is something else. So the common thing which is at the lowest level between these two is the state. So this has state and the second one also has state. So because the name was the same, the Tableau did an automatic connection. So now we put our cursor on this office city, and we are going to get the states from this office city and put them here. Now what you see is that these states name are the same because these states are common. So but I want to see the revenue from the office city, not just the state name, because state name is the same. So instead of state name, I'm going to select the sales and put them here. So for the state of California, the coffee, let me rename here. I can rename the column name here, coffee sale. COFF. So it had the sales of 96,000 for California and 1.1 million for the office city. I can just rename this as office city sale. So, but the problem, you see there's a problem, and I'll explain that problem. The problem is when we did blending, it takes the data from the first data source that you pulled and joins it with the second one. And the first one had less number of states. Although the office has more number of states, but those will not come in the join, because for the join the data from the first one is used. So if I go into the right one, I see office has many more states. So, but when I joined office with coffee, I only get the states which are common between the two. So this is a very important thing to note about blending. Your first data source is very important because that is what will blend with. So now I will do the same example but in the reverse order. I will go to the office sheet which has, I've selected office as my first data source. So I'm seeing all the states from the office, and remaining within this workbook I select coffee chain. They are joined on state, and let me select the sales from coffee chain and get them here. So let's go up. So this is much better. Now I'm not losing any state from the office city because that was my first one. So it brought in all the state from office city, and from coffee it only brought that were common. Now what I want to do is I want to see the combined sales of both office city and coffee chain. So for that I have to create a calculated member. So I'm going to do that. So what I do is I'm going to come here and right click and say create calculated field. So I'm going to call it combined sales. Combined sales. And I come here and then I can drag the columns. So I drag the column. So now just note I'm in coffee chain. So I drag the column from coffee chain here into sales. Then I do a plus and I go to office city. I change this workbook to office city and drag the sales of office city here. So what it did is the first one it just put like this, but in the second one it put a sum. So, and it tells you that from office city data source is taking sales and it does a sum. So the way Tableau works is when you do any aggregation, by default aggregation is sum, but it has to be across both. You cannot have sum on one column and not having on another column. So you need to put this manually because both of them have to be on the same level. So you need to put the sum here, sum. So I got the sum here. So now the error message went away because both are now at the same level. So we are summing both, and then we do an OK. So we got that calculation created, but I don't see it here because it got created on this coffee chain, and I called it the combined sales. But I don't see the combined sales on my workbook because I haven't put it on the workbook. So it's only in the measures. So put it, I'm going to drag it, select it and drag it here. So I summed up both of them together and I'm expecting to see the sum, which is fine. But in this case, this one had value, but this had null. So I'm not seeing anything. And this is behind the scene, it's basically SQL. And as you know, if you combine anything with null, the value will be null. So basically what we need to do is we need to do null handling here. So it is quite simple. What we need to do is we go to combine sales, we do an edit. So this office city, if you see here, Tableau is showing functions on the right side. And let's go down. So these are the functions that are allowed in our formulas. So well, the function I need is called Zn. So I'm going to put a 0 null, Zn, Zn, 0 null. So I'm going to put a bracket here, and I'm going to put a bracket here. So you don't have to remember all these functions. All the functions that are available come up on the sheet. So in our case, we're going to make a, if it's a null, we're going to make it a 0. So what we are doing is we're doing null handling. So in SQL, we need to do that also, because if you're writing SQL, you need to handle nulls. So this is what we are doing. We are doing handling nulls within a formula in Tableau. So we do it here, and let's see. Let me remove it, and let me add it again. Combine sale. I'm still not getting it. Maybe I put it on the wrong column. I put it on the wrong column. So let me do an edit. Let me put it here. There's no harm in putting on the other one also, but I need to put it here. Zn on this one. Okay. You see. So the null got handled. So before we close, I want to show you one more thing. Is when you are joining, you need to try to join at the lowest level. However, if you have information which is lower than your lowest level join, that will not come up correctly. And I'll show you an example. So our join is at the state level. But if I want to go and pull something which is at the lower level, for example, if I go to coffee chain, and I put area code which is at the lower level than the state, but results are not going to be correct. So I just want to show you so that you know. So I'm going to pull it here. So this is it showing as null because coffee chain has less data, so there will be nothing for these ones. This is it showing as star because it has multiple values, it can't display. So I'm just showing you that you will get this unexpected results. You'll only get some values where it's only one value and it is matching between the two. So in this case our primary was office. Let's go back and repeat the same thing on coffee. In this case the primary is coffee, and I'm going to again pull the area code and pull on rows. Now this is a different phenomenon because the primary was coffee and the area code is at the coffee level. Now it's showing you all the area codes. So all the area codes within California. So it's going to show you for the coffee. However, because the office city does not have the data at that lower level, there is no way for Tableau to provide you data at the area code level because that data is not available at the area code level. That data is only available at the state level. So what it is doing is for each row, it is repeating the data that it has. It has the data at the state level. So when you are doing this data blending, so you have to be careful that join at the lowest level and do not use anything that's lower than your join. You can use it lower level data individual. For example, if I remove my blend, if I remove my uh, sales from the office city, then I'm fine because your data is at the lower level. So, so this is example of data blending, and we combine two columns, and you can I'll remove this one. It's a very useful facility, and it has a great power. You can combine data from Oracle and IBM and Excel together, but you need to know how to use it, how to join it, and so this exercise explain data building. So that's all for today. Enjoy your day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
So I'm going to end this.